And I'm going to turn it over to Joseph Barletta, the CEO of Smart Charge America, to discuss how cities and counties and developments can benefit in general from preparing new construction to be ready for future EVSE.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Christian.
You're
Thank you, Christian,
welcome.
Judy, Elizabeth. Appreciate it. For those who don't know myself, my name is Joseph Barletta. I'm the founder and CEO of Smart Charge America. I created the company back in 2007. I started doing conversion enthusiast for EVs, then started doing a few of the Tesla Roadster installs. And 2010 hit, I got the Chevy Volt and the Nissan Leafs coming up and started doing a lot more of those installs. And then 2012 hit and Tesla Model S came out, and Tesla looked us up and they were like, hey man, as much as you can install, go for it. Let's rock and roll. And so I've been partnered up with Tesla, from 2010 ever since. And basically we are an electrical contracting firm that was birthed just as an EV charging station installation company. So I had to learn effectively how to become an electrical contractor over the years. And so much like, I guess you can say, Tesla started out with just all electric vehicles. They were not an ICE manufacturer to begin with. They just started with all things electric. We were kind of the same way. And so what I wanted to do was I saw a really big void in the amount of information and the particulars companies out there that specialized in this. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to specialize in this. I wanted to help those customers that were transitioning from fossil fuel to all electric. I wanted to help them because that transition itself, that's a huge transition. That's a very, very hard transition to make. And so we wanted to be there to take care of all things charging station related for that particular individual or company. And so basically, we've done over 10,000 installs all over the US. We're headquartered here in Austin, Texas. We have satellite offices in the 4 major cities here in Texas: Houston, Dallas, San Antonio. And we also have other cities like Boston, Denver, Phoenix, all 4 in California. So we try to find the most popular EV-friendly cities across the US and basically network to open up satellite offices in those cities. And so we are local. We have an existing contract with the city of Austin and Austin Energy for all of the charging stations you guys see around town. But we're also affiliated with a lot of the other utility companies across the US, and we help them deploy massive fleet-wide charging infrastructure across the city. So, for the most part, what I wanted to talk to you all today about is the enormous amount of savings that we can actually, I guess, assume when we're putting in this EV charging infrastructure. I'm going to tell you all 2 very important numbers, and you can write them down. I don't have them in my presentation. I'll start sharing my screen with you all right now, but for the most part, the 2 most important numbers is 7,000 and 70,000. In general, when putting in level 2 public charging infrastructure, you're looking at a total accumulated cost for the station, the installation, permits, all of the fixings, everything. You're looking at around $7,000 per port. And so that's currently right now the average cost to put in EV charging stations right now. Public charging infrastructure for level 2 is $7,000 per port. If you're looking at putting in DC fast charging infrastructure off of highway corridors, so forth and so on, you're looking at $70,000 per port to put that charging station infrastructure in. That is an enormous cost of capital upfront for any individual or any company. And so what we've noticed is in studying case studies out of China, out of Europe over the past decade, we've noticed that there's a substantial cost savings when you're putting in this infrastructure on the groundbreaking side of things. So during the pre-construction phases of all things, building wise. And so if we could get in front of our developers, if we can get in front of our architects, our construction companies, before they build out these sites, these parking garages, parking lots, we can incentivize and somehow show them that we can save them 90% of the cost of installing this infrastructure just by putting the infrastructure in the ground during the pre-construction phase. And so With that, I wanted to share with you all my screen here. This is, kind of joined up with Lone Star Clean Fuels Alliance, as well as Capital Area City Governments. And basically, we wanted to show you all this presentation that goes and takes a deeper dive into all things cost of installing this infrastructure. So bear with me. I know a lot of you guys are very savvy when it comes to electrical equipment, wire, conduit, breakers, all of that good stuff. But then I know that some of you all have no idea what we're talking about. So I'm trying to make it as easy as possible for everyone involved, in this presentation. So if you don't understand anything, please just interrupt me. I don't care. Ask a question. We'll go from there. But for the most part, I'm going to try not to lose anyone. So let me start the presentation here. This here is a 2-pole 40 amp circuit breaker. So when it comes to public infrastructure, most of the level 2 public charging stations out there, they take this particular type of circuit breaker. This is a circuit, right? So we have to run an electrical circuit from the panel to the charging station, and this is the circuit breaker that is connected to that circuit. So majority of the charging stations out there, they're usually running off of a 2-pole 40 amp circuit breaker, and they usually are able to place 80% of 40 amps, which is around 30 to 32 amps, directly into the vehicle. And so we won't get into too much of that, but that's the circuit breaker side of things. Now, inside that circuit, when you're running the electricity from the panel to the charging station, you have to have electrical lines connected to them. And so this is where the electric circuit comes into place. So a circuit, basically you're putting 2 lines of the black wire and 1 line of the green wire. It's just 2 hots and a ground. And then of course that wire is threaded through your conduit. And so in commercial infrastructure, you'll see a lot of this stuff done post-construction that we're doing. And so that's basically, you have the 3 wires that are inside this conduit. Now you can put more wires inside the conduit. The conduit has to be larger. You can fit more wires in, but for the most part, this is kind of the simplest ideal when you're running that electric line from the panel to the charging station. This is what's inside those conduits. And so here's kind of some of our pre-construction photos. When it comes to infrastructure, you'll see how massive those lines are, and then you'll see how the other lines that are feeding from those lines are kind of smaller. And so what we wanted to do was just kind of to oversize the feeder conduit for future growth in any type of EV readiness program that you guys are looking into doing on the pre-construction side of things. And so this is all stuff that you guys really don't normally see unless you're in the construction industry. And so that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to bring it to light with the presentation. Now, the majority of the time, if we're in the pre-planning phase of setting up this infrastructure, we want to look at, kind of how the parking lot is going to be laid out, and what type of charging stations are we putting in? Are we putting in single port charging stations, or are we going to be putting in dual port charging stations? That's very important. If you're going to be putting in dual port charging stations, you want to put the charging station in between your parking spots. So therefore, those 2 ports, they can touch and actually hit both parking spots. If you're going to be doing single port charging stations, then you want to shove that over, and you want to actually put that charging station directly in front of each parking space. And so that's all I'm showing you here. You can see single setup junction boxes you want to put directly in front of a parking spot. If you're doing dual, then put it right in between, and it should be able to hit both of those. So depending on what type of infrastructure you're planning to put in, this is kind of that layout that you want to run your conduits into your junction boxes, so forth and so on. And so when dealing with, charging infrastructure, it's important to know that, I know a lot of you guys, you know electrical, and you know that with a 40 amp breaker, if I'm putting in a 200 amp panel, I can only put in about 5 breakers in that 200 amp panel, maybe 6, to support all of my charging stations. So here I am, I have a 40 space electric panel. And because of how charging stations work, if they're not smart metered, or if they're not, smart charging, I can literally only put 6 charging stations in that panel, and that's it. That means my electric capacity inside that 200 amp panel is completely taken up by those 6 breakers and those 6 charging stations. However, if you have charging stations that have smart metering technology in them, then you can better plan out, and out of that 42 space 200 amp panel, well, now I can put in 20 charging stations in that panel, and by electric code, the inspector can go there and say, okay, well, these are all smart charging stations. They're all communicating with one another. They're not at any given one time, they're not exceeding the electric capacity of that panel. And so therefore, as an electrical inspector, I will go ahead and allow you to set up 20 charging stations from this panel as opposed to 5 or 6, like we talked about before. So smart metering is a really, and smart charging stations, they're a really good source to be able to put in a lot more infrastructure for, pretty much the same cost. And so we want to look into making sure that the charging stations that we are installing, they do have smart metering technology and load balancing and management capabilities for that. And so looking at the actual cost, this is just the cost. So this is, if I'm an electrical contractor and I'm coming in to actually do the install, or let's say I'm in charge of the whole project, and I'm doing it, this is my cost to put the infrastructure in place. So if I'm looking at my wires, looking about 100, maybe 200 plus, this is all updated pricing after COVID and after the commodity cyclone that is of lumber and copper that has definitely hit the market and skyrocketed prices. So this is all updated pricing. So you're looking at, between your wire, your conduit, the fittings, the breaker, the labor on the actual cost to install, everything on a pre-construction side of things, you're looking at around $375 per run. Now, what I did was I said, okay, well, what's the most common complex or commercial complex that exists out there? Majority of the time, we're dealing with multifamily units. Sometimes we're dealing with parking lots, so forth and so on. So we wanted to take a 250 unit complex, and we wanted to say that, hey, this complex, they have in their bylaws, they want to set up their parking spaces to be 10% EV ready. That's the type of EV ready plan that the architects and the developers and the construction, this is the type of readiness plan that the actual site wants to set up. So given that you have 250 unit complex, and you have 1.5 spaces per unit, you're looking at around 38 spaces altogether that they have to make EV ready. And so with an average run of about 125 feet, that's where I'm coming up with these numbers. And so overall, we're building let's say an apartment complex. They're wanting 10% of those spaces EV ready. And of that calculation, we have 38 spaces that we have to prepare and get EV ready for. And so an average of all of those runs, some are going to be 40 feet, some are going to be 200 feet, but an average of all those runs are going to be 125 feet per run. And so to take that conduit and run it to each one of those 38 parking spots, it's going to be a total of $375 per run. And so for me as an electrical contractor, that's going to cost me $14,250 for that entire project on average. Now I'm trying to get in and get out. If I can get in and get out in 3 days, I'm doing the construction of that. My guys are pretty efficient. They're probably able to get in and get out in 2 days. And so for the most part, that's what it costs me as an electrical contractor. If I'm in charge of that site, that's what it's costing me. And so if you're building, if you're the construction company, this is most likely, you're probably able to get it, if that, or maybe lower, depending on if you're doing massive amounts of volume when it comes to product purchasing. So that's the cost scenario. Now, I'm going to take that same cost scenario and we're going to say post-construction costs. Someone wants Smart Charge America to come in and they want us to install these charging stations, but it's after the fact. So unfortunately, we didn't get to them during the construction and the architecture and the planning phase. And all of a sudden they're like, oh crap, we need charging stations. And so we're like, okay, well, how many do you want? And they're saying, well, we're wanting 10% EV ready. And so again, we're given the same scenario, 38 spaces, 25 feet, an average run. Now, as an electrical contractor, I'm not I'm not buying something for $1 and selling it for $1. I have to actually make a profit margin on our install. And so the installation, that profit margin consists of markup on materials and markup on labor and time. And then there's also other various factors like coring and third-party subcontract work that I have to do that has to make that project come to fruition. So given that, post-construction costs, again, looking at the wiring costs, the conduit costs, the fittings, the breaker, the labor to put the conduit in, and then these are some of the more specialized stuff there. You're looking at somewhere around 2,946, or let's say $3,000 per run. And at 38 runs, they're looking at a total cost of somewhere around $112,000. And so when you have that cost scenario, given the 10% EV ready space that the development has planned for and they want to do, if they can do it on a pre-construction phase, you're looking at around $14,000. If they're going to be doing it on a post-construction phase, you're looking at somewhere around $112,000. And so that's effectively around 90% cost savings that we can actually save firms by getting in front of them, getting in front of the developers, in front of the architects, the construction companies that are planning this development. We can put all this stuff in the plans. That's exactly how much we are looking to save for that. So here's just a few of our photos kind of in and around town, various different types of setups, whether it be multifamily, commercial, parking lot, all of that good stuff. So you can see single port. This is directly in front of a parking space. This is for an individual owner, and it's basically metered here with an EKM meter, and it allows the HOA to see every month, record exactly how much power is being used by the station, and then of course that HOA is charging that individual customer for the electric use. Because that customer is tapped into a community electric panel. And so there's no real way for the HOA to be able to cipher out exactly how much that individual driver owes them back at the end of the month. And this EKM meter does allow that. And so this is one of the more famous charge point CT4021s that you all see around town. You can see that we're putting in asset protection here. We want to make sure that we're ADA compliant on all things. We have our signage here. And I'm not too sure about this hose. This is not electric car related. This is looks like more of the landscapers are out here doing it at that time. But for the most part, this is an ideal setup on a level 2 dual port charging system. You can see the charging stations in between the parking spaces, one port for each charging spot, parking spot. That's ideal. That's how we want to set it up. And of course, this is some more installation photos. You can see, the amount of conduits that we have to run for a particular post-construction setup. This is everything that's involved in these particular sites. I mean, you're looking at construction work, concrete work, framing. If we can get in on the ground level and do this, it's a lot cheaper, for planning. Here's an example of coring. So if you guys saw that $2,600 per core, when you're coring, you have to have a specialized company come in there and they have to scan the concrete to make sure that we're not hitting any rebar or conduit or water lines or anything that's pre-built and planned and inside the actual conduit, inside the concrete during the building phase. And so that takes a lot. And so you can see that some of the drawings from the scanning company, and then that company actually has to go in and core a giant massive hole through the concrete so we can run our conduit from one side of the garage to another. And so that's pretty important. On all things considered, cost related wise. And then this is just some of the what it looks like when the conduit is actually pre-ran in the construction, and you can see the wiring there. There's your two hots and your ground, and that's basically going to go up to the charging station. You can see here the same thing. And so this is kind of in the pre-planning phase. This is what we want to show the construction companies. You see the extra wire that's hanging out there. That extra wire, that's perfect. That's enough length for me to put my charging station on, and then I can tie in my circuits and connect my charging stations. If you just give me wire and you cut it right here, I don't have enough wire so that I can sleeve through and connect the charging station. So it's important that they have around 3 to 5 extra feet of of wire coming in there, bundled up. They either put this way, or they actually put it inside of a junction box and close it until we're actually able to come in after the construction phase and place that charging infrastructure in. And so these are a few more of our actual pictures. You can see some of our fleet charging that we set up with some of the DC fast charging and some of the other smaller level 2 fleet charging across town. But that is pretty much it. That's all I have for the presentation. So at this point, I didn't want to bore you all or listen to listen to me any longer. I'd like to take questions if you guys have any questions relative to some of the information that I shared with you today. So I will open up the floor to everyone else. And I don't know, like, I guess, do we go into the, you might be able to help Christian with the hand. I know some people ask questions in the chat and raise their hand or whatnot. So I'll let you guys go.
Yeah, feel free. You can feel free to unmute yourself, or if you want to put in the chat or raise your hand to see we've got someone who's got their hand raised.
So Elizabeth has a question. Elizabeth has a question.
Yeah.
I do have a question. Thank you. Joseph, what is the reaction from management companies or whomever you go out to talk to about doing this? I can imagine that there's some question of who pays for this, how does that get absorbed? But I'm just wondering what the reaction is when you go out and talk to people about doing this pre-construction.
Reaction 5 years ago is that they were looking at me like I was like complete stranger, and didn't know what I was talking about. Like, they were like, dude, this is way too much cost. There's no way I'm putting this in. Like, we don't even need this stuff now. So 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, it was a really hard sell. But I think now, more people are becoming aware, and they see that it is something that's important. They see that people are knocking down their doors, their customers, their employees, everyone's knocking down their door. They're wanting this infrastructure in place, and now they're kind of stuck. And they see, oh man, you know what? If I would have known this, I would have definitely done it in the pre-construction phase. The problem is 90% of our buildings out there have been built, previous to 2010. So I think the reaction 7 years ago was, we're not going to do it. We're just going to wait. They're trying to be reactive instead of proactive. But now everyone's wanting to be proactive, and now everyone's wanting to get us involved. And basically, if we're not doing the actual install and the electrical side of things, we're consulting with them on the proper design, the best layout to save them the most money, and just the smart design around setting up the infrastructure in a manner that not only takes care of 10%, but can also take care of 20, 30, 40, even 50, hell, even 100% if they want to go that route. If they see that that's the way the future's moving and they want to prepare for that. It's, that's one of the things that we're seeing, is that most of the time they're not just looking at, well, how much does it cost if I do this for 1 or 2 stations? It used to be 10%. Now they're wanting 25, 50% of their parking spaces, considered EV ready. And so, yeah, like I said, reactive previous. Now most companies are trying to be proactive. But if you're looking at a construction company or utility company and they're inside their portfolio and they're trying to put these charging stations in the ground, 90 to 95% of the buildings that they're trying to put it in, they're already built. And so if we can get to 10% of the cost allocation towards this presentation, what I'm talking here, then I think it's worth it. But we're working on some things to even drive down that post-construction cost even further, for all of our clients. And I think every electrical contractor that looks at this, they're going to always think of ways that they can scale things out, that they can look at, saving as much money as possible for the long term. So that's a great question. Thank you, Liz.
Well, I'm also thinking of some of the new construction that I see going on all around, from business parks to just multifamily homes. And I'm wondering if in the business parks, anyone is thinking of them using EVs? Because we don't have a lot of EVs. I mean, they're not common. They're coming, sure,
Right.
medium
Right.
duty, and that in and of itself should motivate them. So if there are
Yeah.
things that you can think of that we could do to spread the word and perhaps talk to more folks to see this as a very, very inexpensive, environmentally friendly way of putting this in. I mean, what you've explained, it's a huge difference and a lot of work to do it retroactively. So
Yeah, and
thank you.
it's your cost scenario or your use case scenario. I mean, if you're a parks and recreation and you're looking to put in 2 charging stations in one of your facilities, and you don't really see a need for having 10% or 20% or 50% of the spaces EV ready, you're just wanting to accommodate visitors and users of that infrastructure, then yeah, they're gonna put in maybe 2 stations and that's it. But I just want to stress the oversized conduit whenever you are putting in those stations in the pre-planning phase. So that way, because right now we can't see the future, we don't know what it's like to have every single charging station with every single parking spot with charging stations. But guess who is? China. China's got 2.2 million charging stations all over. They are tenfold. Everything you see in America, just think 10 times that. That's what China is living in right now. Europe is about 5 years away from China, and Europe's 4 to 5 times more than we are here. And so I try to look and study those spaces and those cases in China, and try to put that in America. Try to have the lessons learned. So if that development doesn't want to set up 100% of their spaces, EV ready, then that's fine. If we do 10, then let's maybe put in the infrastructure or the scalability for maybe, let's say 20 or 50, but we don't have to use that right now. But yeah, it may cost a little bit, but overall, I think everyone here that's with a utility company or a construction company or anyone, it's all about the budget. If you can put this in the budgeting process beforehand, I think you're really able to save a lot of money, which increases your rate of return for these assets if you're looking to monetize these stations. I can't stress that enough. If you're looking to put charging stations in the ground and try to make a use case scenario for making money and monetizing these charging stations at $112,000 to put these charging stations in, it's going to take you a very, very long time to make money on these stations. But if you're doing it in the pre-construction phase, you're going to be able to have a faster rate of return and start making money on these assets, which is a really good thing when it comes to budgeting and investment in these amenities. So I hope that helps.
I have a question, if that's all right. First of all, I want to comment that, one of the issues to take care of this, or one of the solutions to take care of this, if there is a requirement to make your construction EV ready, or even what's called EV capable, which is
Yep.
like partially getting the really expensive things done in the pre-construction phase. And it's my understanding that there was talk about getting that into, and Joseph, you probably know the nitty-gritty details of this, there was talk about getting that into the latest version of the International Building Code that cities adopt, but it didn't make it in, but they did come up with some good recommendations. And I know that Leslie Poole on the Austin City Council is starting to explore how we might move forward on that in Austin. So that's really good, because that'll take care of the issue. But I wanted to ask about the retrofits, because it's my, and I should say that the focus for EV ready stuff, there's going to be pushback, that's understood. And I think that the focus is probably going to be in the multifamily world, because that's where you get sort of the biggest bang for the buck. But I wanted to ask about retrofits and what you're seeing, like the numbers that you show, which is really great information. I love seeing it all broken down like that. The numbers that you show sort of make it seem like, why would anybody ever do a retrofit? But I understand that there are some apartment buildings in Austin, like when we were talking about transportation electrification in the climate plan that Phoebe was part of. in Austin. It's my understanding that there is work going on for MF retrofits around Austin. So are you actually seeing some of that going on?
We are. We're seeing a lot of that, and most of the construction companies are calling us up, and they're wanting charging stations. And then, of course, we're trying to say, okay, well, what do your plans look like? What are you looking for? Because not all charging stations are built equal, and so sometimes, they may have planned for, this, nice expensive charging station, and then we've convinced them, hey, look, based on your use case scenario, you don't need that. You need, this is exactly what it is you're needing. So we're trying to help even save them more money. But we are seeing a lot of the construction companies come to us for ordering charging stations. And because the charging stations are unique, because they have sort of a cellular connectability aspect to it, and as well as the software and the hardware and the electrical side of things, you really want to be careful. And so they're getting us to just come in. They're running all the electrical. We're coming in and we're tying it in, and we're activating the charging station. And that's important. We try to stress with construction companies, if you don't have a team that's able to come in and tie in the charging station and activate them and connect those charging stations to the network that they're connected to, and get them up and running for use, we've seen some of these stations go into the ground, and they're sitting there for 6 months without being able to be used, because the construction company, they just did their job. They ran the electrical, they put the charging station in, and that was it. But the charging stations, they need to be able to connect to operate. And so the majority of the time we have a lot of property management companies coming to us to put this infrastructure in. And we also are seeing an increase of construction companies calling us, maybe not to put in the infrastructure, but to actually order the stations and have us come in and tie it in. And that's what they want. They want somebody who knows this stuff, that's actually able to as soon as we put that station and connect it, it's up and running for their customers. And then, of course, we're able to service any type of troubleshooting and configuring. We know these stations in and out. And so that's a viable resource, as opposed to just getting an electrical contractor that may not be savvy with the connectability, networking, software side of these stations. So yeah, we are seeing a number of construction companies come to us for that. So I hope that answered your question a little bit.
Well, sort of. I was talking about retrofitting. So are you getting apartment buildings saying, oh my gosh, we know that in order to keep our tenants, some of them want charging stations, so we want to go ahead and actually invest the big money to put it in after construction?
Yes, and that's where we're looking at infrastructure deals. Now, when we're having to do a major infrastructure overhaul to the complex, you're looking at, I would say, somewhere around $60,000 to $100,000. That's just to put in the panels on each one of the floors that will be able to support each one of the runs that they want to go to. So I just focused on the runs in this presentation here, but the actual infrastructure to put that in place, depending on how old the building is, the electric capacity of the building, and whether or not they have enough inside, each one of their parking garages or to put that infrastructure in. Overhauling the infrastructure build out is effectively somewhere we're seeing average prices between $60,000 and $120,000 to
a lot of money.
At the point, and then go from there. So yeah.
Will you be able to share those slides? Because I know that a lot of times I get questions from people about, well, how much do you save, and if you do it ahead of time? And yeah. I've seen like a case study, but it's from 2016, and everybody seems to reference that case study. And so having your numbers would be really useful.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I can absolutely share that. And Christian, Elizabeth, you guys have that. If after the presentation you want to share it with everyone, by all means, it's a PDF presentation.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I also, Joseph, it's okay, plan to share the recording for anyone who couldn't attend. Sure. Sure, you can feel free to share that as well.
Viral. Let's hope that it goes viral.
And you had a question?
Go, well, I wanted to add on to what we were just talking about the presentation. If there's a way to consolidate it, to provide it to some of our infrastructure team and some of the planning team, just so that they can have, kind of a quick and easy slideshow. They might not need all the beginning of it. They might not need the end of it, but just that cost comparison thing. What we've been talking about is just running the conduit and not running the wire. And I was wondering if you had any thoughts about that, and if maybe that's a mistake or not. But it's easier to find the money to do the conduit, not as easy to run all the wires and prep it up, especially when we're not sure if we're going to be able to install the charging station right away or how long that might be. And sometimes our construction projects take longer than maybe they should, but sometimes things just take a long time. We are the state. Yeah, and the other thing I wanted to ask about is electric. I guess I just wanted to say that my experience in working on retrofitting and installing charging stations after the fact is actually even more expensive than what you've laid out, Joseph. It's
Wow.
yeah, it's really hard to do, and so yeah, we definitely want to try to get in front of it if we can. But that's how we were tackling it, was with the conduit, not with the wire. And so I'm wondering if maybe we need to look at it differently.
Yeah, it just depends. When you're looking at EV ready spaces, there's 4 different tiers of like kind of markups or I guess makeups of what makes up EV ready. You can do the conduit in the pre-construction, and that's it. You just run the conduit. You can run the conduit plus the wire and the breakers to the panels, and that's it. That's like the second type. The third would be running the conduit, the wires, the breakers, and actually setting up the charging station there, right? And then the fourth one is just a full turnkey. You have the conduit, the wires, the breakers, the charging station, the asset protection, the parking space signs, the painted parking lanes, all of that stuff. That's like the full I guess, yeah, the full turnkey solution there. But those are the 4, kind of phases that we've broken down EV readiness to. And so if you can do the conduit, you can effectively save, let's say, probably 75 to 80% of the cost. I think if you're doing the conduit and the wire and the breaker, every one that you do, you save more money in that process. So,
sure. I'm just wondering, pulling the wire isn't that big of a thing after the fact. Is that what you're saying? Like, yeah, I know it costs money to pull the wire. That's always, but it's sometimes when you're trying to just get the project to include the conduit, is that really, I guess, effective enough?
Yes, absolutely. You can get a 75 to 80% cost savings just by doing the conduit. Absolutely. Because that's for me pulling the wire, it takes me, let's say, an hour to pull, let's say 30 minutes to pull 125 feet of wire. It takes that whether or not it's pre-construction or post-construction. It's the same amount of time pulling that wire. And so it's just a matter of if that wire exists. And a lot of the construction companies, they are penny pinching when it comes to cost. And if you're going from conduit, that's one thing. But if you're doing conduit and wire, look at the price of the conduit. That's 13 sticks at 10 feet per stick at $20 each, $260. But look at the cost, for the wire, just to put that in there. That almost, it's about 125% of the cost, from the conduit. So if they can just take care of the conduit and they don't have to worry about the fittings and the breaker and the wire and the labor, that's it. That's a massive amount of cost savings that they're going to cost. So then, post-construction wise, I'm coming in and I'm just charging them to run that wire, to install the breaker, and my labor actually reduces because it doesn't take me that long to run the wire. But I do, there is the cost of the actual wire itself. I'm not buying something for $1 and selling it for $1. So you have to make a profit margin on the materials and the labor. So, but effectively, it's going to be a lot less ticket as opposed to if I have to run conduit. And because every time I have to run conduit, it takes labor to run that conduit every 10 feet, right? And so the more conduit I have to run, the more labor is actually put on the project itself. And so if the conduit is already there, you're saving a lot of money, regardless of what sector or what type of EV readiness program you want to go with. number one, just running the conduit, you're probably going to save the most money doing that on the construction side of things for the contractor that's doing the construction.
That's great to hear that we're kind of headed in the right direction. Thank you for that reassurance. Yeah, and so I would just say anybody else who's trying to just get anything they can done. I've had some success in that area, not quite getting all the other stuff done, the wire and all of that, but I think we're headed in the right direction for our new construction. But I find in retrofitting, the other issue is our electrical panels are so overtaxed that we just don't have the electrical. We can't expand our electrical panel, and so that's been big challenge. Yeah.
This is a new electrical setup. This is a new panel. You see all the conduits.
So pretty.
This is what it would look like if we come in and do the infrastructure build out, and then, the spaghetti lines, from the new panels to the actual charging station spots. So yeah, this is what it looks like when you're doing the full package. Absolutely.
Okay, everyone, we are pretty much at time. Thank you everyone for participating. I will share Joseph's contact information when I send out the slides and everything. So if you have any more questions, feel free to reach out to him, or you can reach out to Elizabeth and we will forward that on. And thank you again. I will say we're having a similar roundtable next week, more focused on fleets. And we will have Austin Energy there presenting on their maintenance and contracting for their charging equipment. So if you are interested in that, I'll also share the calendar invitation to that roundtable, and you are all welcome to attend and learn about the maintenance and contracting from Austin Energy. Thank you, everyone. And thank you again, Joseph.
Thank you, guys.
Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.